Hey, somebody needs to smoke the turkey. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to The Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. The Professional Noticer is sponsored this week by our friends at Tucker ATV. You know, the sheer variety of power sport products at Tucker ATV are just amazing. Hustler turf equipment, the entire line of Echo power tools, and of course Tucker ATV carries every model, every make of Polaris ATVs. They have the Polaris side-by-sides, the even bigger Ranger Cruise. And you have to see the show room. Taxidermy, antique displays, an indoor porch with a porch swing, nice chairs, television, coffee. Stop in and meet Shannon and Lisa Tucker. They treat customers like family, which is why folks from 14 states have done business with Tucker ATV. Highway 43 North in Jackson, Alabama. Tucker ATV, the small town business with a national reputation. Observations and answers, that's what we do here on The Professional Noticer. And today, a special upcoming Thanksgiving episode. We are going to continue with our tradition here that we've had for the past several years of reading a Thanksgiving story for you on one or two episodes. And so this is the first time this year we have read a story, and certainly the first time a Thanksgiving story, but this is from the book Return to Sawyerton Springs, which I wrote a bunch of years ago. It's out of print, but the audio of the book is going to be on wisdomharbor.com, and it's going to be on there soon. So you can actually join wisdomharbor.com. It's 7 cents a day. So very inexpensive, but you can dig into that audiobook doc and get these too. But here is the story of Mr. Michael Ted. Michael Ted Williams passed away last week. He would have been 95 years old. It was 3 days before Thanksgiving. Mr. Michael Ted was tall and skinny and had been a part of the landscape in Sawyerton Springs for as long as anyone could remember. When I was a kid, we often stopped by Mr. Michael Ted's house after school. He was old then, but you'd have never known it. Always laughing, he lived alone in a big 2-story house off Cherokee Avenue. Just him and his cats. Mr. Michael Ted had more than 10,000 cats, or at least it seemed that way. There were cats inside the house, outside the house, around the house, and on the house. He had black cats, white cats, and every kind of cat in between. Funny thing, though, he actually claimed to hate cats. "You give me a wet cat and a good kick," he'd say, "and I'll get 40 yards out of one of them things. Sneaky jerks. Communists what they are, always peeking around corners, spying on everybody. They are the rear ends of the animal world." "Well, why do you keep them?" we'd ask. "I can't get them to leave," he'd fume. "I tell them to get lost every day, but they stay around to torture me. Don't ever try to tell a cat nothing, kid, 'cause he ain't gonna listen." For all the talking Michael Ted Williams did about hating the cats, he never adequately explained to anyone why he bought 50-pound sacks of cat food, or why he made toys for them, or why he made them all sleep inside when it was cold. There was one place in his house, however, where the cats were not allowed. It was an area the whole town knew about because most of us had been through it. We younger people thought it was neat, but its very existence caused most of the adults in town to think Michael Ted Williams was rather a nut. I'm referring to his Elvis room. Mr. Michael Ted liked Elvis Presley. No, strike that. Mr. Michael Ted loved Elvis Presley. He absolutely idolized the man. It seems strange to us that an older person would be so crazy about an entertainer like Elvis, but he was. "Bing Crosby and them guys never had a clue," he'd say. "Elvis did it all. He could sing, he could act, and he loved his mother." The Elvis room was at the end of the hall on the second floor. It was a shrine. Hundreds of pictures were stacked on shelves, anchored by Elvis decanters or other figurines. Movie posters were on the walls. Fun in Acapulco, Girls, 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 Viva Las Vegas, GI Blues, and Clam Bake, all framed nicely. By the door, a filing cabinet held every single record the man ever made, every album and every 45, still in their original jackets. 129 ticket stubs were neatly displayed on a table in the corner. Each stub was a reminder of particular concerts attended by Mr. Michael Ted. "That there's the scarf Elvis wore in Louisville," he'd say as he showed someone through the room. "Real sweat on it, too. See that stain? Here's a popcorn bag from Tallahassee. Somebody threw it on stage. Elvis kicked it off, and I caught it. I was right there, right in the first row." Every now and then, one of the kids in town would say something mean about Elvis just to get a rise out of Mr. Michael Ted. It always worked. Once, Dickie Rollins made a comment about prescription medicine, and I believe actually used the term druggie before finding his left ear wrapped around the old man's finger. Elvis had migraines, Dickie was told, and suffered from several karate injuries. And unless Dickie wanted to know firsthand how a karate injury felt, he was to keep his opinions about pharmaceuticals to himself. When Elvis died in 1977, Mr. Michael Ted left his cars in care of his nephew Billy Pat and headed to Memphis. We saw him drive out of town past the elementary school with tears rolling down his face. For 3 days he stood outside the gates at Graceland, paying his respect with thousands of others. He met a lady about his own age, Patsy Jones from DeKalb, Mississippi. She had met Elvis once at a train station. Having missed her connection that night, she hadn't any money to eat supper. Patsy showed Mr. Michael Ted the $5 bill Elvis had given her for food, and as he held the bill admiringly, he asked why she hadn't spent it. She had been too excited to eat, she told him, and besides, she added, it was the nicest thing anyone had ever done for her. When he got back into town, there wasn't a trace of sadness in Michael Ted Williams. "Elvis was way too young to go," he explained, "but the young feller had a good life. He helped a lot of people ease their loneliness, and I, for one, will always be grateful. We still got his music, so we still got him." From that point until his own passing last week, Mr. Michael Ted actually increased his obsession with Elvis, but in a happy way. He would travel hundreds of miles to talk to someone who even knew the singer. He bought and traded more memorabilia and even held an Elvis dance every spring for the high school. Nothing but Elvis songs were played for the kids, who were all dressed like Elvis and Priscilla. Priscilla was, according to Mr. Michael Ted, the only woman Elvis ever really loved. About a year ago, Mr. Michael Ted started giving away his cats. "I ain't real young anymore. You know, these fur balls need to be with somebody who'll kick 'em around occasionally." Almost every person in town took a cat or two. We knew that he was preparing for the end. What we didn't know, however, was how prepared he actually was. "I'll be stopping by the bank on the way into work," Billy Pat said to his wife, Jenny, at breakfast Wednesday morning. "Everything's already set, I think, but the will said that the funeral instructions were in a safety deposit box." As the closest blood relative to the deceased, Billy Pat Williams had been named executor of the estate. It was all very simple, actually. The house and lot were to become the property of the Methodist Church. The contents of the house were to be divided equally between friends and family, except for the Elvis memorabilia. It was all to be carefully packaged and shipped to DeKalb, Mississippi, in care of Patsy Jones. Billy Pat arrived at the bank shortly after they opened and followed a teller into the vault. He unlocked the box number 30024, and inside he found an envelope marked Instructions. Slipping it into his jacket pocket, Billy Pat thanked the teller, left the bank, and drove directly to the only funeral home in Sawyerton Springs, Mike's Mortuary. Mike Martin, the mortician, met Billy Pat in the foyer, took the unopened envelope, and assured him that all would be taken care of. "I'll call you after lunch with the final details," Mike said. "But let's go ahead and set the service for Friday at 2 o'clock. 10 minutes later, as Billy Pat walked into his offices at the Toyota dealership, his secretary held the phone out to him and said, "Mr. Martin's on the phone. It must be important because he insisted on holding, and he's been holding for 7 or 8 minutes. Billy Pat wrinkled his eyebrows in a confused manner and took the phone. "Yeah, Mike, this is Billy Pat. What's going on?" "Billy Pat, did you read the instructions your uncle left for his funeral?" Mike asked. "Well, no," Billy Pat said. "I never even opened the envelope." Mike continued. "Did he, by chance, ever give you any idea about his plans?" "No, I don't think so." "Did Mr. Michael Ted's will say anything about a funeral?" "Just that his instructions were to be followed," Billy Pat said. "What's all this about, anyway?" "It's about the biggest send-off this town's ever had, or is likely to ever have. For God's sake, Billy Pat, get down here. You are not going to believe this. On Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock, the day after Thanksgiving, Bowman's Pond United Methodist Church was filled to overflowing. In fact, I believe it's safe to say that the entire town was there. Every man, woman, and child, even some people who weren't particularly close to Mr. Michael Ted. There existed an air of expectation one rarely experiences at a funeral. The word had gotten out. Near the casket were rows and rows of flowers. Gorgeous sprays of carnations and roses surrounded sayings like "Gone but not forgotten" or "In our hearts forever." Near the steps of the church's pulpit was the arrangement from Miss Luna Myers and Miss Edna Thigpen. It was a plastic telephone encircled by purple gladiolas and white mums. Above the phone were the words, "Jesus called, Michael Ted answered." Mike Martin stood to the side. He was horrified. He knew what was about to come, and it seemed to him almost indecent, but as was his custom, he had done exactly as the deceased requested. Pastor Wade Ward sat in his chair on the pulpit, crossing and uncrossing his legs constantly. He kept wiping his face with a handkerchief. Pastor Ward was nervous. Maybe it was the music. "Love Me Tender" was playing in the background. New things always made Pastor Ward nervous, and today he was about to perform his first Elvis funeral. Mike Martin stood to the side. He was horrified. He knew what was about to come, and it seemed to him almost indecent, but as was his custom, he had done exactly as the deceased requested. Pastor Wade Ward sat in his chair on the pulpit, crossing and uncrossing his legs constantly. He kept wiping his face with a handkerchief. Pastor Ward was nervous. Maybe it was the music. "Love Me Tender" was playing in the background. New things always made Pastor Ward nervous, and today he was about to perform his first Elvis funeral. Mike nodded at Terry Henley, who approached the pulpit to sing the first song. "This is nuts," she thought. "A song like this at a funeral? Well, here goes. You aren't anything but a hound dog, crying all the time. You aren't anything but a hound dog, crying all the time. You haven't ever caught a rabbit, and you aren't any friend of mine." Terry sang the song. She wasn't happy about it, but she did it. It wasn't appropriate to use improper English in church, she felt, so she took the liberty of changing some words. Well, they said you were high class, but that was not the truth. She also sang Heartbreak Hotel and Teddy Bear. Several people snickered when she finished her last song and said, Thank you very much." Then it was Pastor Ward's turn. "Brothers and sisters," he began, "we're gathered here to mourn the loss of a friend. He was a very unusual man." Pastor Ward said later that moment was the only occasion in his entire ministerial career that the entire congregation amened a single statement. As he finished his prepared words about how wonderful a person the dearly departed had been, Pastor Ward paused to say a silent prayer of his own. "Sweet Jesus," he muttered, "get me through this next part." Reading from a printed sheet of paper Mike had given to him earlier, Pastor Ward said, "And now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for. From Sawyerton Springs, Alabama, Michael Ted Williams." Mike Martin pushed the button on a tape player and started toward the coffin. Ba, 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 boom, 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 ba. As the music from 2001: A Space Odyssey filled the sanctuary, Mike slowly lifted the casket lid. Boom, 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 ba, ba. As the lid opened, the mourners, if indeed they could have been called that, stood up and moved forward to get a better look. At the loudest part of the song, Mike had the casket fully open, and as he stepped back, people broke into applause. There, amid the flashbulbs popping, was Mr. Michael Ted Williams. His hair had been dyed jet black. He was wearing fake sideburns and a gold tux. He looked good. In fact, that's exactly what everyone said. "Doesn't he look good?" He didn't look natural, but a few people said so anyway. Everyone did agree, however, that he looked exactly as he had intended. He looked like a 94-year-old dead Elvis Presley. It's an understatement to say that no one will ever forget Mr. Michael Ted. He was a great old guy who provided us with chuckles and laughter even after his passing. One can imagine him laughing as he wrote down the instructions for his own funeral, the most amazing production any of us had ever seen. There was one more time during the service in which the congregation applauded. It was out of respect and admiration for the old man. Applause is intended as acknowledgement of a job well done, whether that job is a show or life itself. So it was fitting that the congregation stood as one, clapping and cheering as the casket was carried out of the church. And then, with a big smile on his face, Pastor Ward looked at the people and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, you can all go home. Michael Ted has left the building." I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing the tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Cranberry Whomp for the cast and crew, provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration lovingly provided by the folks at gobblegadgetry.com, your one-stop shop for the most unnecessary yet utterly irresistible Thanksgiving doodads. Are you prepared to revolutionize your Thanksgiving with gadgets you never knew you needed? Buckle up, Butterball, because gobblegadgetry.com is here to up the ante on your Turkey Day shenanigans. Introducing the Pie High Club membership. For those who always insist they can fit in one more slice of pie, now you can prove it with a certificate that is as golden as Grandma's crust. Members receive a monthly shipment of expandable pie pans because why choose one when you can have pie and pie and pie? But wait, there's more. Have you ever thought this gravy boat just isn't nautical enough? Well, set sail with our newest Gravy Navy, the first gravy boat fleet featuring a gravy battleship, a gravy cruiser, and the ever-impressive, unsinkable gravy aircraft carrier. Impress your guests or initiate a gravy armada across the high seas of your dining room table. And who could forget the tofurkey talkie? The perfect gift for the vegetarian in your life. It's a walkie-talkie inside a faux turkey. Now you can pass along those veggie recipes with a bit of holiday flair or simply offer moral support from the kitchen by saying, "Over and sprout." It's all there at gobblegadgetry.com because who says you can't stuff more fun into Thanksgiving?